My name is Jake. I'm 36 years old, born and raised right here in New York, USA, in a bustling neighborhood where the towering skyscrapers of Manhattan cast long shadows over the electric buzz of Times Square. You know that spot, where the billboards scream with neon lights, tourists snap selfies under the giant screens, and the air smells like hot dogs and exhaust from yellow cabs zooming by. Growing up, I'd sneak out after school to watch the chaos, dreaming of the big city life I'd one day claim. But beneath the glamour, it was just home, a mix of Italian delis, corner bodegas, and families like mine, scraping by with that classic New York grit. I've always been the steady type, the guy who blends into the background but keeps things running smooth. By day, I'm a software engineer at a tech firm in a sleek downtown office, crunching code on projects that power apps you probably use every day, think ride-sharing or streaming services. My routine's predictable: coffee from the corner shop at 7 a.m., subway rides packed with commuters, and late nights debugging glitches while the city hums outside my window. I live in a modest apartment in the West Village, nothing fancy, but with a balcony overlooking the Hudson River. On clear days, I can see the water shimmering under the sun, ferries chugging by like floating reminders of how vast the world is beyond my little corner. It's peaceful, in a way, my sanctuary from the grind, filled with books on coding and old vinyl records from the 80s that remind me of simpler times. Family was my anchor, the one constant in this ever-changing metropolis. My parents, God bless them, ran a small deli in Queens, the kind of place where regulars knew your name and the pastrami was sliced thick enough to make you weep. Dad would be behind the counter, cracking jokes with customers while Mom handled the books, her apron stained with mustard and dreams of retiring someday. They weren't wealthy, but they taught me the value of hard work, sweeping floors after school, learning to make a mean Reuben sandwich. And then there was my Aunt, Sarah, who lived just a subway ride away in Brooklyn. She was the one who'd swoop in like a whirlwind, treating me like her own son. We'd hop the F train to Central Park for picnics under the oak trees, her packing sandwiches and stories that made me feel like the luckiest kid alive. She'd tell me about her wild youth in the city, sneaking into concerts or dancing till dawn, her laughter echoing through the park. "Life's too short not to chase the fun, Jake," she'd say, ruffling my hair. In a way, she was my confidant, the one who listened when school got tough or when I doubted myself. Little did I know, those moments were laced with secrets she carried like a heavy backpack. But everything shattered when I took that DNA ancestry test on a whim. It was one of those lazy Saturday afternoons, rain pattering against my window, the Hudson looking gray and moody. I'd seen the ads online, promising to unlock your roots, maybe connect you with long-lost cousins or reveal some exotic heritage. Why not? I thought. For $99, it could be fun, a way to spice up my routine life. I spat into the tube, mailed it off, and forgot about it. Weeks later, the email popped up, results ready. I clicked through the percentages, expecting maybe some Irish or Italian blood from my deli-owning folks. But then I saw it, a match that didn't add up. My Aunt Sarah wasn't just family, the DNA screamed she was my biological mother. The woman I'd called Mom all my life? She was actually my grandmother. And my dad? Not my dad at all. The ancestry traced back to Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, completely out of the USA. My stomach twisted. How could this be? I stared at the screen, the city lights flickering outside like mocking stars, my mind racing through every family photo, every holiday dinner. Was my whole life a lie? I was still reeling, pacing my kitchen, when my phone rang. The screen lit up, Sarah. My aunt. "Jake, we have to talk right now," she said, her voice breaking like she was on the edge of collapse, words tumbling out in a rush. "Come over. It's about your parents. They've been lying to you for 30 years. The line went dead, but her words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Lying? For 30 years? My heart pounded as I grabbed my coat, the rain now pouring outside. What the hell was happening? If I didn't go, if I didn't demand answers, this could unravel everything, my family, my identity, my place in this city that had always felt like mine. The subway ride to Brooklyn felt endless, each stop a knot tightening in my gut. What secrets had they buried? And why now? As the doors opened at her station, I stepped out into the storm, knowing nothing would ever be the same. My pulse raced like I just sprinted through Central Park at midnight. What the hell was she talking about? I clutched the phone so hard my knuckles turned white, the screen still glowing with Sarah's call log. My mind spun, lying for 30 years? That couldn't be right. I dropped the phone onto the counter and turned back to my laptop, the DNA report staring up at me like an accusation. The results were undeniable, laid out in crisp charts and percentages that mocked my ignorance. There it was, a 99.9% match linking me to Sarah as my biological mother. Not just an aunt, but the woman who'd given birth to me. The woman I'd called Mom all my life. She was actually my grandmother, her face flashing in my mind, wrinkled hands serving me pancakes on Sundays, her voice scolding me for staying out too late. And my dad? The man who'd taught me to throw a baseball in the backyard, who'd cheered at my Little League games? Not my dad at all. The ancestry tree branched out wildly, tracing my paternal line to Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, a complete stranger from down under, some guy I'd never met, whose genes had shaped my blue eyes and that faint accent people sometimes teased me about. The room felt like it was closing in, the walls of my modest apartment shrinking as the distant wail of New York sirens pierced the night, amplifying my shock. I sank into my chair, the Hudson River outside my window now a dark, churning void instead of the peaceful view I loved. They've been lying to you for 30 years. Sarah's words replayed endlessly in my head, a loop that twisted my gut. Was this some twisted dream? A prank gone wrong? I pinched my arm, hard enough to leave a mark, but the pain was real, grounding me in this nightmare. How could my whole identity be a sham? All those years, birthday parties at the deli in Queens, family vacations to the Jersey Shore, the pride in being a true New Yorker, built on a foundation of deceit. Memories flooded back, my mom brushing my hair as a kid, whispering, "You're our miracle, Jake." Miracle? Or a cover-up? And Sarah, my aunt, always hovering with that extra hug, that knowing smile. Had she been hiding this all along, watching me grow up as her secret son? The weight of it crushed me. If I didn't confront it, if I buried this like they had, the truth could destroy everything. My family bonds, those Sunday dinners at the deli, where Dad would slice pastrami with a wink and Mom would fuss over seconds, could fracture into irreparable shards. What if they denied it? What if this led to screaming matches, lawyers dividing the family business, or worse, a public scandal in our tight-knit Queens community? My sense of self felt like it was crumbling. Who was I now? A 36-year-old software engineer with a stable job and a predictable life, or a man pieced together from lies, with roots stretching across the Pacific to a father I'd never known? Even my roots in this fast-paced city, where heritage stories run deep, from Ellis Island immigrants to modern dreamers, suddenly felt tainted. Would I ever look at the Statue of Liberty the same way, knowing my bloodline included an Australian stranger? Panic clawed at my chest. I stood up, pacing the small kitchen, knocking over a mug that shattered on the floor, coffee splattering like the mess of my life. The DNA site had suggested possible relatives in Sydney. I clicked on one, a half-brother maybe, his profile pic showing a guy with my same jawline, surfing on a beach. My heart ached. What would he think if he knew? And Sarah, why call now? The urgency in her voice echoed, "Come over." I glanced at the clock. It was past 9 p.m., the city alive with lights but my world tilting. If I went, I'd have to face it all, the tears, the confessions, the fallout. But staying here, staring at this screen, felt like cowardice. The consequences loomed larger with every second, emotional scars that could haunt me forever, trust shattered like that broken mug. I grabbed my keys, the rain outside now a downpour, and headed for the door. The subway would take me to Brooklyn, to answers I wasn't sure I wanted. But deep down, I knew I had to. What had they hidden for so long? And how would it change me? As I stepped into the night, the wind whipping off the Hudson, I felt the first crack in the facade of my life, irreversible, terrifying, and utterly real. I hailed a cab outside my building, the rain-slicked streets of the West Village reflecting the neon glow of the city like a distorted mirror. The yellow taxi screeched to a halt, and I slid into the back seat, the driver, a grizzled guy with a Yankees cap, grunting a hello as I barked, "Brooklyn, please. Fast as you can." The evening rush was in full swing, honking horns, pedestrians darting across intersections with umbrellas up, the air thick with the scent of wet pavement and street vendor hot dogs. My mind raced faster than the traffic, replaying Sarah's call over and over. Come over. What was I walking into? A confession? A breakdown? I stared out the window at the blurred lights of Manhattan fading into the tunnel, my stomach churning like the East River during a storm. By the time we crossed the bridge, the rain had eased to a drizzle, but my anxiety hadn't. I paid the fare, way too much for the short ride, and stepped out onto the quiet street in Brooklyn, the brownstones looming like silent witnesses. Her apartment was in a cozy building near the waterfront, the kind with ivy creeping up the facade and a doorman who nodded as I passed. I took the elevator up, the old gears creaking, each floor amplifying the thud of my heart. When I knocked, the door opened almost immediately. There she was, Sarah, my aunt, with red-rimmed eyes that spoke volumes, her usual vibrant energy drained like the color from a faded photo. She pulled me into a hug, her arms wrapping around me tightly, smelling of lavender soap and something familiar, like the cookies she'd bake for my birthdays. "I'm so sorry, Jake," she whispered, her voice cracking, tears wetting my shoulder. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stood there frozen, the warmth of her embrace clashing with the cold shock still coursing through me. Part of me wanted to push away, to demand answers right there in the hallway, but another part, the kid in me who'd always felt safe with her, let her lead me inside. We sat on her worn leather couch in the living room, the East River visible through the window, its dark waters choppy under the overcast sky. Framed photos lined the shelves, me as a toddler splashing in a kiddie pool, me graduating high school with a goofy grin, family vacations where Sarah was always in the background, smiling that knowing smile. She handed me a mug of coffee, black, just how I liked it, and sat across from me, her hands trembling as she clasped them in her lap. The air was thick with unspoken words, the only sound the distant hum of traffic and the tick of her antique clock. Finally, she laid it out, her voice steady at first but breaking as she went. "It started in the 80s, she said, staring at the river. I was 19, wild and free, working at a cafe in Soho. That's where I met him, an Australian backpacker visiting New York on a gap year. His name was Alex, from Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Tall, tanned, with that easy charm Aussies have. We hit it off instantly, late-night talks about dreams, hikes in the Catskills, dancing at underground clubs. It was passionate, electric. But then he had to go back home. Come with me, he begged, but I was scared, tied to my family here. We said goodbye at JFK, promising to stay in touch. But life happened." She paused, sipping her coffee, her eyes distant. "A few months later, I found out I was pregnant. With you, Jake. I was terrified, 19, no job, no plan. My parents, your grandparents, freaked out. They pressured me to give you up, but in the end, they couldn't. We'll raise him as ours, they said. To avoid scandal in our close-knit community, where everyone knew everyone's business. Your mom, my mother, had always wanted kids but couldn't conceive after complications. It was a seamless cover. They told everyone you were theirs, and I became the doting aunt. But God, it hurt. Watching you call her mom, seeing you grow up thinking my brother was your dad. The lie grew heavier with every year. As you got older, I'd catch you questioning things: why you didn't look like Dad, with his dark hair and stocky build, or why your accent had that subtle lilt, almost like a whisper of down under. I'd brush it off, make jokes, but inside, it ate at me. Her words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered, like the storm clouds outside. I sat there, coffee cooling in my hands, processing the avalanche. Sarah, my aunt, my confidante, was my mother. The woman who'd braided my hair as a kid, who'd driven me to soccer practice, was the one who'd carried me for 9 months. And my grandparents, the deli owners who'd tucked me in at night, had orchestrated this charade? The betrayal stung, sharp and deep, but beneath it, a flicker of understanding. She was just a kid back then, pressured into silence. Yet, the questions piled up: why now? What about my real dad, Alex from Sydney? Did he know? Had he tried to find me? The room felt smaller, the photos on the wall now mocking me with their staged smiles. I set the mug down, my voice hoarse. Why tell me now, after all this time? She looked up, tears streaming. Because I saw you changing, Jake. The lie was poisoning us all. And with that DNA test, I couldn't hide it anymore. The East River churned outside, mirroring the turmoil inside me. What came next? Confronting my parents? Digging into my Australian roots? As the night deepened, I knew this was just the beginning, a door cracked open to a past I'd never imagined, one that could redefine everything. But sitting there with her, the woman who'd been both aunt and mother, I felt the first stirrings of something new, not just anger, but a desperate need for the full truth. The consequences weighed on me like a relentless storm cloud hovering over the city, dark and oppressive, threatening to unleash chaos at any moment. Facing them, my grandparents, the people I'd always seen as the unshakable pillars of our family, could tear everything apart. They were in their 70s now, retired from the deli but still the heart of our New York life, hosting Sunday dinners where the aroma of homemade lasagna filled the air and stories of the old neighborhood flowed like cheap wine. My grandma, with her silver hair and apron always on, baking cookies that tasted like childhood, my grandpa, telling tales of immigrating from Italy, his hands gnarled from years of slicing meats. How could I shatter that? What if confronting them led to screaming matches that echoed through the brownstone halls, or worse, a permanent rift where holidays became awkward silences and family gatherings turned into ghost towns? The thought of public fallout made my skin crawl. Our Queens community was tight-knit, the kind where news spread faster than gossip at a block party. Neighbors who'd known me since I was in diapers might whisper behind our backs, or worse, judge us openly. Inheritance disputes loomed too: the deli, the modest savings, the family home. Would it all get tangled in lawyers and courtrooms, pitting us against each other like strangers? I thought about my own world, the one I'd built brick by brick in this concrete jungle. The holidays, Thanksgiving turkeys carved at Grandma's table, Christmas lights twinkling on the tree in the living room, 4th of July barbecues in Queens where the smell of charcoal and hot dogs mingled with laughter. Those were the moments that defined me, the American pride I'd always embraced, waving the flag at parades, cheering for the Yankees, feeling that deep-rooted connection to the land of opportunity. But now, the DNA test had ripped that away, revealing Australian roots that made me feel like an outsider in my own backyard. My blue eyes, that faint drawl in my speech, suddenly it all clicked. I wasn't just Jake from New York, I was Jake with a father from Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, a man whose genes had infiltrated my very being. What did that mean for my identity? Would I start questioning every tradition, every value I'd held dear? The stakes terrified me, a cold dread settling in my bones. Fractured relationships stared me down, friends and cousins I'd grown up with might pull away, unsure how to handle the new me. An identity crisis loomed, one that could redefine my future in ways I couldn't yet fathom. Would I seek out my biological father, fly to Australia, and confront a stranger who might not even know I existed? Or would I cling to the lies, pretending nothing changed, only to have them erode me from the inside. The weight pressed harder, making my chest tight. I imagined the domino effect, therapy sessions to unpack the trauma, late nights Googling Australian culture, maybe even a trip down under that could either heal or widen the wounds. What about my job, my apartment by the Hudson? Would they feel tainted, reminders of a life built on deception? And love? Future relationships, kids of my own, how could I trust when my own family had lied so profoundly? The storm inside me raged, mirroring the one brewing outside the window. I paced Sarah's living room, the East River churning below, each wave a reminder of how one revelation could capsize a life. Yet, beneath the fear, a spark of defiance flickered. Maybe facing it head-on was the only way to rebuild. But as the night wore on, the consequences felt insurmountable, a mountain I wasn't sure I had the strength to climb. What if I lost them all, the family I'd known, the self I'd been? The uncertainty gnawed at me, pulling me deeper into a vortex of doubt and dread. I needed answers, but at what cost? The path ahead blurred, fraught with peril, and I stood at the edge, heart pounding, wondering if the truth was worth the wreckage it might leave behind. That night, I lay awake in Sarah's guest room, the city noise outside a relentless symphony of unrest, sirens wailing like distant cries, taxis honking impatiently, and the muffled thump of bass from a nearby club. The East River lapped against the shore below, its rhythm mocking the turmoil in my head. Every creak of the old building, every shadow dancing on the wall from passing headlights, amplified my anxiety. Sleep was a stranger. Instead, I tossed and turned, replaying Sarah's confession like a broken record. Her words echoed, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Was she right to tell me? Or had she just detonated a bomb in our family? By dawn, the first light filtered through the curtains, casting a gray pall over the room. I dragged myself out of bed, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at my reflection in the mirror, a man with bloodshot eyes and a face etched with doubt. I couldn't avoid it any longer. I had to confront them, my parents, the ones who'd raised me, lied to me, shaped me. The subway ride to Queens felt like an eternity, each stop a knot tightening in my stomach, the car rocking like a ship in a storm. The next morning, I pushed open the door to their deli in Queens, New York, USA, the familiar bell jingling overhead like a cruel reminder of normalcy. The smells hit me first, smoky pastrami sizzling on the grill, the tangy bite of mustard, the yeasty warmth of fresh rye bread. It was comforting, nostalgic, the scent of 1,000 childhood lunches. But today, it felt suffocating, a veil over the deception. My parents were behind the counter, Mom wiping down the glass case, her apron stained with coffee spills, and Dad flipping sandwiches with practiced ease, his sleeves rolled up, sweat beading on his forehead. A few regulars nodded hello, oblivious to the earthquake about to hit. I approached, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone with the DNA results. Mom, Dad, we need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. What's going on, Jake? My mom asked, her face paling instantly, the color draining like milk spilling on the counter. She set down her rag, her eyes widening in that way they did when she sensed trouble, maybe from a bad grade in school or a scraped knee as a kid. Dad paused mid-flip, the spatula hovering over the grill, the sizzle of meat filling the awkward silence. I showed them the screen, the percentages glaring back. This says she's my mother, I said, pointing to Sarah's name on the ancestry chart, my finger trembling. And my dad's from Sydney? Not you? The words hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. The deli felt smaller suddenly, the walls closing in, the chatter of customers fading into a dull roar. The silence was thick, oppressive, broken only by the sizzle of the grill and the distant clatter of plates. My dad's shoulders slumped, his face crumpling like he'd aged 10 years in seconds. He set the spatula down, wiped his hands on his apron, and leaned against the counter, his voice breaking as he finally spoke. It's true, son, he admitted, tears welling in his eyes. There was an affair, your mom, Sarah, she was young, reckless. She got pregnant, and we covered it up. Raised you as ours to protect you, to give you a normal life. No one had to know. He glanced at my mom, who nodded weakly, her hands clutching the edge of the counter. We did it for you, he added, his voice pleading. To keep you stable here, in New York, away from the whispers and judgments. We thought it was the right thing. I stood there, frozen, the smells of the deli now nauseating. Stable? Normal? The word stung like salt in a wound. All those years, tucking me in, teaching me to ride a bike, cheering at my games, had it all been an act? My mom's eyes met mine, filled with a mix of fear and sorrow, and for a moment, I saw the weight she'd carried. But anger bubbled up, hot and fierce. Protect me? By lying to me my whole life? I shot back, my voice rising. The regulars glanced over, sensing the tension, but I didn't care. Dad reached out, but I stepped back. How could you? The confrontation hung in the balance, the deli's warmth now a stark contrast to the chill in my heart. What now? Walk away? Demand more? The truth was out, but the fallout was just beginning, a storm that could sweep away everything I'd ever known. As the grill hissed behind us, I felt the first cracks in the foundation of my world, irreversible and raw. But stable? Fury erupted, I yelled, stormed out, and cut ties for weeks. Isolation gripped me, I wandered the streets of Manhattan, New York, USA, wrestling with who I was. My biological mother called non-stop, sharing her past, emails from Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, a photo of them at the Opera House, her guilt for not speaking up. It softened my edge, but the betrayal stung. I started therapy in Midtown, New York, USA, unpacking suppressed questions. Who was I now, a New York guy with Aussie blood? The ripples expanded, awkward family gatherings, doubts about my path, intrigue about half-siblings in Australia. Months later, I dug deeper. I met my grandparents again in their home overlooking the Hudson in New York, USA. They revealed more, hushed doctor visits in Chicago, USA, to alter records, a pact over coffee to bury the secret. It was about preserving reputation in a society where such truths could ruin lives. Emotionally, it wrecked us. My mother watched me call another mom, her regret building. And me? I'd missed my true heritage, my father's side from Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, perhaps explaining my love for beach vibes or Australian TV shows. One chilly evening in New York, USA, I sat with her, the one I'd called Aunt. Why now? I asked over coffee. Why after 30 years? She sighed, rain tapping the window. You were drifting, Jake. The lie was poisoning everything. We talked for hours, mixing tears with laughs. Forgiveness began to bloom. I reconnected with my grandparents, setting boundaries while honoring their choices. Family dinners became genuine. Through the DNA site, I linked with relatives in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, discovering cousins who shared my traits and tales of my father's life there. Reflecting now, that DNA test didn't just expose a secret, it spanned oceans. The 30-year lie shaped me, but I claim my story. Therapy helps, embracing my roots does too. Consequences linger, strained ties, cultural shifts in New York, USA. But facing it forged resilience. If you're tuning in from the USA or Australia, and secrets haunt you, don't wait. My journey, from New York's hustle to Sydney's distant shores, proves truth, though painful, sets you free. What would you choose?